Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to episode 4 of the Dying Sports YouTube page and podcast network. We've got a real great guest today. Joining us is David Gourlay, who is the former co-owner of the Ottawa Champions, as well as team president. He's also done a lot of work in the Ottawa community, not serving not only on the Ottawa Sport Council, but also helping to chair the Miracle League of Ottawa, working with the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group in their philanthropic endeavors with OSEG Foundation and more. He's got a lot of great experience, not only with community building, but also just in the sports industry. And very rarely do you get the chance to talk with the owner of a professional sports franchise at any level. So real great insights into what goes into the sports management industry and helping to leverage your connections and why community is so important. So I've had the opportunity to know David in a variety of capacities, and I think there's a lot to take away from this interview and lots to share and hopefully use in your own life as well too. So hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Dying Sports Podcast Network and YouTube page. Joining me today is David Gourlay. David, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well,
Yeah,
How's life over at the Gourlay household these days? You keeping busy with the little ones, or?
we are. Yeah, we're teaching Sophia a little bit of soccer, a little bit of baseball, and we're trying to fill the days. You know, she's 4.5. She's in JK. The thing about COVID is, the government only closes school 1 month at a time. So of course we were kind of hoping she'd get back to school. Now it's not looking like she will. So you're just trying to fill the day, and you're not trying to fill it with Disney Plus and Netflix. It's nice to get outside
Yeah.
and enjoy some warm weather now that it's finally here, and take in some recreation and leisure and things like that. So she's getting her batting swing up to speed here, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Nice. There you go. Yeah, that's part of the reason we're doing landscaping work over at our house right now, because
Right.
a shovel and dirt keeps kids entertained, right?
Oh,
It's the
totally.
little things of
Totally.
life.
Whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, let's get the obvious out of the way with right away. You can even see in your background here, you're a big baseball guy, right? Is this something that you've always been passionate about from your days as a kid, or was it something that sort of just grew over time?
It was something that I've always been a baseball fan, Kyle, from as early as I can remember. I think I was 6 or 7, and I'm from Ottawa originally, and I remember my dad saying, "Well, we can be a fan of," because of course at that time Ottawa didn't have a baseball team, it didn't have a hockey team, so we'll either go east or we'll go west. It's either the Expos and the Habs or the Blue Jays and the Leafs, and for whatever reason, I really don't have a definitive reason why we went east. But I became a huge Montreal Expos fan. I mean, this was the era of Raines, Dawson, Carter, Cromartie, Chris Spire, Larry Parrish. I could go on and on and on. And I just fell in love with the team. I fell in love with the brand. I fell in love with the history of baseball as well. That's something I've carried forward to this very day.
Yeah, yeah, and so when you were younger, then was it always a goal to, you know what, one day I want to work in sports, I want to work in baseball,
No,
or did you just sort of
no.
happen to pieces fell together,
Yeah.
and that's sort of how your life shaped up?
Yeah, I mean, I pursued a career in the federal government, and then I went into the private sector. Sport was never ever part of my career trajectory in any kind of way. And keep in mind also, I never actually worked for the Ottawa Champions. Everybody thinks I was a paid employee as president and co-owner, but I was a volunteer. So while I worked in sport, and I certainly had exposure to all angles of the business and the community side of it and all that, and I learned a ton of stuff with the work that I did for the Champions, and then subsequently working at OSEG for 14 months in their foundation. It was never part of the plan. I never planned to do this. And my story is very, very simple. I consider myself to be a bit of a Jerry Maguire. I was reading a book about the business of baseball out of pure interest, nothing more, called The Extra 2%. And it talked about the importance of community. at community as an asset to a professional sport team. In this case, it was a baseball team, the Tampa Bay Rays down in Tampa, Florida. That sounds obvious to a lot of us. Well, of course, community is important. Why wouldn't it be? But when you start drilling down on the specifics of what community is to a professional sport team in terms of leveraging the fan base, and one of the tips that Tampa leverages, there were two that stuck out with me. One is there's a massive seniors population. So the Tampa Bay Rays were actively paying for networking and building relationships with the local seniors community, but also they were paying for shuttle buses because transportation was a huge barrier for the seniors. The second one was designing a 5-kilometer perimeter around the ballpark and actively networking, socializing, marketing the baseball team, because that's your walk-up crowd. And a walk-up crowd to a professional sport team is so critical for your revenue base. The Ottawa Senators don't really have that because there's really no housing communities directly around Canadian Tire Center. OSEG, though, has the great benefit of being right in the middle of a massive residential community. And so when you start looking at pro sports and the revenue projections, you start crunching the numbers, looking at forecasting, transportation, community, proximity to your venue is so critical. The next day after I finished that book, I opened up the Ottawa Citizen newspaper and I read an article that the city of Ottawa was pursuing a Blue Jays AA team. And what struck me, Kyle, about that article was it was all about administration, bureaucracy, city hall, the ballpark, of course, but it didn't actually talk about the game. It didn't talk about baseball. It didn't talk about community. It didn't talk about business partnerships and charitable partnerships. So I picked up the phone. I called City Hall. I called the mayor. I called the mayor's chief of staff. I called some other contacts I had, and I said, you need to connect the RFP process of securing a team for the ballpark, and I'm sure your audience knows the ballpark is owned by the city, and you need to connect that to community. You need to give the concept and the idea of baseball a real community identity. And well, here we are today. The rest is history.
Wow. Look at that. Just picking up a book and the wild
there you go. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, that must have been a pretty cool feeling then, once you did sort of get aligned with the Ottawa Champions group and the ownership group and part of bringing professional baseball back to Ottawa. What was that feeling like when you guys finally got the green light and, yep, you guys are ready to go. Next season, you're hitting the field. Well, just describe that, because I can't even imagine.
Yeah, Kyle, it was a remarkable feeling of accomplishment, success. There's business concepts around finite thinking and infinite thinking. And the concept there is finite is very temporary. It's a rules-based environment. And infinite thinking is that idea that we can go on forever. And your vision is about public good. Your vision is about public service. And you're always planning for the future. The moment that we secured a franchise, we had an owner in place, and we knew that it was going to be May of 2015. I just had this great sense of I finally made a difference. And I know that sounds a little like, why would in pro sports, why would you have that I've made a difference? Because a professional sport team is about people. It's about community. It gives families an opportunity to spend a beautiful Sunday summer afternoon at the ballpark. Baseball is a very casual sport. You and I go to a ballpark, we have a couple of beers, we watch the game, we chat, we socialize. In a city like this, there's always people at the ballpark, you're talking, you hear the crack of the bat, you look at what's going on, then you go back to doing your social stuff. It's a wonderful environment. And I just thought, I want the Ottawa Champions to make a difference in this city. I want them to be a fundamental part of our business community, our charitable sector. I want it to raise strong philanthropic dollars for organizations across, including, of course, the Boys and Girls Club of Ottawa and others. I want families to feel that this is a fun, affordable entertainment option for them, because really, at the end of the day, pro sports is about entertainment. It's about having fun. It's about clean bathrooms, cold beer, good food, and really affordable parking. Those are all the things that I learned, which I never imagined at the beginning, but you learn that. So that initial feeling that I had was remarkable accomplishment, and we're going to make a real difference for our city.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure, if we take out the day you got married, the day your daughter was born and all that, that would probably be in the top 5. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would also say, of course, the wedding and the birth of Sophia is right up at the top. There's no compromise there. But the other moment, of course, is when I hoisted the championship cup in Rockland, New York in 2016. And that for me was probably the highlight, of course, of my time with the champions, because you're winning on the field is not something you really control. So my role with the champions was very community focused, bringing in corporate sponsors, making sure we had local craft beer. That was my favorite one. Ensuring that we connected with fans, that we were in every nook and cranny of the community. My first act as president was to deliver the All-Star game in 2017, to be part of the whole Canada 150th Ottawa 2017. But the on-field business side was something that I really did not engage in, because I didn't need to, because we had Hal Lanier, Seb Boucher, Billy Horn, Jared Lemieux. We had some awesome, awesome people. And, as I reflect on my time with the champions, I was never happier when I was with the fans in the stands and I was sitting having beer with Hal Lanier. Those are just remarkable moments.
Yeah, yeah. No, I can imagine. So, I mean, unless you're a professional athlete on the winning team or one of the few people who are in media that get to actually cover it there, very few people get to experience what it's like, as you say, lifting that trophy. You've won the league championship. You're in the locker room. What's going on in there? Describe the atmosphere.
Sure. It's absolute euphoria. So my story is we lost games 1 and 2 in the championship final in 2016. We went down to Rockland. I stayed at home because we had family commitments, and I couldn't go with the team. I was invited to be on the bus and all that, but I couldn't go with the team. But then we won game 3 and 4, and I remember saying to Danielle, "I gotta go. I gotta be with my team." Got in the car on that Sunday morning, drove.
Love you, honey, but I gotta
go. Sophia wasn't born then, but I was out of here. I had to be with my team, win or lose, of course. Went down to Rockland, 8-hour drive. Rockland, New York, for the audience, is just beside Manhattan. Austin Chrisman, Kenny Bryant took care of the team, and we won the championship. And the locker room euphoria, it's all true. Champagne, beer baths, all over the place. I was drenched in alcohol. I actually didn't really drink any alcohol, but I certainly was drenched in it. And it was one of those defining moments. And that's why lifelong friendships are created. So for those baseball players, Kyle, they'll never forget that moment. They'll never forget, as a professional baseball player, I contributed to a championship team. Some great guys I still keep in touch with to this day. Most of them are back in the U.S., but of course one of them is pitching for the Toronto Blue Jays, Wilmer Font.
Yeah.
A remarkable story. From Venezuela, came and pitched with us in 2015, half of 2016 before he was signed by the Blue Jays. And there's Wilmer to this day. And I'll tell you, every time I message Wilmer, he stops and asks, answers any questions I have, always has an autograph for me or Sophia. She's got a baseball card collection now, Wilmer Font baseball card collection. These are the things that you hold on to. These are the memories, and these are the contributions that you want to make. And now that the Ottawa Champions are likely finished, because when Miles sold the team, he kept the brand. So he still owns the brand, the logo, the name. I don't know what the future of baseball holds right now, but if we do have a new team coming in 2021, it will likely be a new team name. So I'm now committed. My next phase of baseball will be celebrating the legacy, celebrating what we did. We had, 5 remarkable years. Some great people came through. Some fans to this day still tell me we had such a remarkable time. Bryce DeRoche, my friend Bryce, who is the champion behind the Miracle League of Ottawa, just had a video dance party with Daniel Bick and Matt Helms, two of our former players. Those relationships are still intact to this day, and they will be for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's so everything you see on the documentaries and that, it's pretty much true then.
It's true. It's true. Absolutely.
Awesome. So, I mean, there's a lot of armchair analysts out there, and a lot of sports nuts who probably think, "Oh, I could run a pro sports franchise. If I was in control of insert team name here, we'd be winning the cup every year or hoisting the trophy."
Sure.
But
Sure.
you and I sort of grasp it, but a lot of people are just unable to sort of wrap their heads around just how much work goes on behind the scenes. It's not just show up and turn the lights on and unlock the gates and in come fans, right? So
That's right.
what did a typical work week sort of look for you? And let's say like in season. So we're in the
Sure.
middle of maybe a homestand. What would a work week look for you?
Well, and as you touched on, the logistics of a baseball game. If we're to say, it's game day and the game starts at 7 o'clock, the logistics and preparation start first thing in the morning with the grounds crew. They've got to take care of what was at the time. I think the Ottawa Champions won the Can-Am Field of the Year 4 years out of 5 because it was so professionally manicured, groomed, and taken care of by Guy and his the grounds crew, and they're of course the city of Ottawa. It starts with the grounds crew. It starts with taking care of the field, making sure it's ready for game time and game play. And then it's just Lacage comes in with all their concessions and making sure that, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, the beer is cold, the food is hot and warm, and everything is moving. A lot of trains run at the same time as you lead up to a professional sport game. You got to have your staff in place. You got to have your tickets ready. The box office is getting itself organized with its financials and getting tickets ready, printed, all that kind of stuff. You're, of course, the team comes in around 1 o'clock. The team will arrive to get ready for BP. The visiting team comes in around 3:30. And then it's mayhem, right? You got lots of people around. Game day staff are starting to arrive. Our ushers, box office attendants, merchandise store employees, concession employees. So there's a lot of moving parts. That's why you need a very strong general manager. You need a strong support team that's in place to make sure that everyone's got it and organized. The Ottawa Champions, on average, we had maybe between 2,500 to 3,000, depending on the day. We were totally weather dependent in Ottawa. We had a lot of interesting attendance trends. We found that when school was out as of late June, our attendance would always go up, and then people would realize at the end of August, oh my God, summer's almost over. We got to get to a baseball game, and so our attendance would spike, and we had a good sense of how we would do. Monday and Tuesday nights were not as busy as a Thursday or Friday night, and we would prepare accordingly and make sure that everything was on track. So it's a business, and this is a really important message for your audience, Kyle. Sport teams it's a business. It's about profit and loss. It's about bums and seats. It's about selling the hot dogs and the t-shirts and the hats and getting people to park their cars. We are a business, and we have to make sure that we're making a profit in order to survive. And so that introduces a lot of equation around customer service, ensuring that people are having a great time, that our promotions and the entertainment are top notch, as good as we can afford as an independent team in a community like ours. So there's a lot of moving parts, and it all kind of comes together at the end as we did, I thought, quite well.
Yeah. No, as someone who attended many a Champions game there, you guys definitely made sure all the trains arrived at the same time, and we always had a great time when we were there. So,
Good.
For those that might be trying to get their foot in the door in the sports industry, whether it's with a professional team or grassroots level, or is there any maybe marketable skill that's just really in demand that people could sort of use to their advantage to maybe get their foot
Sure.
in the door?
Well, I know that we, it's not very glamorous, but financial planning, forecasting, budgeting, accounting, whatever, however you want to define that, is really critical. And so what I mean by that is it's a business, as I've said. So you're operating per month or per game is X, and we got to make sure that either through corporate sponsorships, through paid promotions, through our concession revenue, our merchandise revenue, our ticket revenue, and parking revenue, and it just goes on and on and on. Those skills are very valuable. It's often said in the Moneyball era, a lot of kids would graduate from school. I want to go work for the Oakland A's or the Cleveland Indians or whatever it is, and I'm gonna crunch data. I'm gonna crunch, the WAR and all the new generation of stats, and that's very valuable to win on the field. But before you win on the field, you have to have the business side of it. The other really critical skill is relationship building and networking. You've got to get out in the community. You've got to be a champion for your city that you're playing in. That is pertains to the players. It pertains to the coaching staff, the manager, as well as your front office. Your front office has to be visible in the community. My mentor in this regard is, of course, Cyril Leader when he was with the Ottawa Senators. He exemplified what that means to a professional sport team. And I really tried to emulate that with the Ottawa Champions by being out there, speaking at the Chamber of Commerce, setting up co-founding a charity called the Miracle League of Ottawa, so that people see that baseball is more than just bats and balls, balls and strikes and all that kind of stuff. It's a meaningful part of the community. So I wish they teach that at sport management class at Algonquin or at Ottawa U, because these are the real skills that you need. And of course, the other big one is sales, business development, sales, corporate partnerships. It's not much fun to say, but at the end of the day, we're a business more than anything else, and we have to make money in order to survive. And you hear about this all the time with our other professional sport teams, particularly in the COVID environment right now, and the stress that they're going through about what the future looks like.
Yeah, no, well said. And, this is now several episodes into our series here. And exactly what you said, it keeps coming up again and again. It's relationships, building your network. It's
Absolutely.
And, not only with your work with the Ottawa Champions, but also with, the OSEG Foundation, your new position with Shepherds of Good Hope. And, you've always seemed to be having community and philanthropy at, the forefront of your mind there. Where did this sense of, giving back and this, desire to make an impact in the community come from?
My father. My dad was a diplomat. He just passed away in February, but he was a career diplomat, and I saw him represent our country on the international stage as a diplomat, as a trade commissioner. When we came back we were posted in London, England for 5 years when I was a teenager. When we returned, I didn't really have a strong sense of what it was like to be a Canadian, because I'd been abroad so much. And so I remember I got involved in politics because I thought that would be a great way to learn about my country, learn about my community, and just get involved in democratic conversations and engagement and all that kind of stuff. That led me to a career in the federal public service. And it was when I went to work for Jim Watson, when he was mayor of the old city of Ottawa. We had two-tier government in those days. I'm embarrassed to say how long ago that was. A long time ago now. And I learned about the value of community and giving back, because Jim is such a fantastic champion for that. He does so much for our city, continues to do it to this day. He's devoted his entire career to it. And I learned a lot from him about that, and got involved right away. That was 20 years ago. And I, it's ironic, I'll be 50 at the end of the year. Wow, say that again, David. And I just feel like I'm getting ramped up. I've got this amazing, amazing role, and I'm so lucky to be working at Shepherds, Director of Philanthropy, responsible for our foundation. What a critical time to be in social services in the homelessness sector with COVID, supporting our most vulnerable. I had a fantastic 14 months at the OSEG Foundation, learning about sport philanthropy and the value of sport for not just children and youth, marginalized populations, those that are isolated, those that face tremendous barriers right here in our city, whether you're in Canada, Barrhaven or Orleans, new Canadians, girls, autistic children, special needs children, all face tremendous barriers to sport, and no one should be limited from having fun around sport and learning life lessons. So all this put together, and as I said earlier, the Ottawa Champions for me, well, look at the name. The name Ottawa Champions, championing the community, championing charities, championing business, championing our city. That is really at the heart of what I wanted to do with that team.
Fantastic. Yeah. And you know what, it comes through in everything that you do. And, you know, so you're definitely building quite a legacy here, and, you know, it's exciting to see what's in store for you. But on the topic of sort of legacy buildings, you've also been part of some pretty large scale projects as well. You know, as you already mentioned, you had the All-Star game that you brought to Ottawa for the bicentennial there. You had also part of the group that was trying to bring the 2021 Canada Games to the nation's capital as well too. So, you know, for those that might not know sort of how much goes into that, like, how far in advance are you guys starting to have preliminary talks about bringing these massive scale projects to fruition?
So we'll start with the All-Star game. That was my first act as president. I went to the 2014 Can-Am American Association All-Star game in Winnipeg, and I met all my fellow owners across American Association Can-Am, and I of course gave Miles, our majority owner in Ottawa, was also commissioner of both leagues at the time, and I just gave him a heads up. Look, I would love to host the All-Star game in 2017. We can tie it to all the major celebrations, not only across Canada, of course, but in Ottawa, be a part of the official program, and that will give us a lot of visibility. When you're a brand new sports franchise starting out, you have to be extremely humble and you have to be extremely proud. And so it was important for us to put that into the community narrative that it's 3 years away, but you know, time flies. So it's going to be coming up. And as you remember, 2017 was just a tsunami of events. We had everything from crashed ice to the Grey Cup to sport events to cultural events. I forget the name, the dragon that walked through the Byward Market. We had so much going on. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted the Ottawa Champions in baseball to have a small part of it. It was a small part. We, unfortunately, and this is Mother Nature, we had a home run derby and a skills competition lined up, and that was canceled due to rain, but we did get the game in. We recognized Mr. Jim Durrell, who was instrumental in building the ballpark. We made a series of community announcements. So that was a great source of pride for me. And then the Canada Summer Games, yeah, I mean, we worked on that 2016, 2017. Cyril and Sue Holloway were the co-chairs. I met a lot of people, and I really loved that process. I met so many great people that care about our city, that wanted to see the games here. That would have been next year. And we lost. But I'll tell you, there was one defining moment for me that really stood out. Cyril had us to the Sens game, a group of us, and we were in a suite, and there's a photo that was taken, that's still out there, of course, of Bernie Ash, who was CEO of OSEG at the time, Cyril Leader, who was president of the Ottawa Senators at the time, and myself, president of the Ottawa Champions at the time, with the mayor. And we all kind of looked at each other and realized this process has brought all three professional organizations together. And that doesn't happen very often.
No.
We often don't, unless it's a charitable cause, of course, and the clubs work together. It doesn't happen very often that we work together for a common community cause. But this was one of them. And I think there's a real narrative there. There's a real message of cohesion and coming together, and sport brings people together as well. And that was a tremendous process that really articulated the value of sport, recreation, and leisure in our city, which I'm proud to do now as a board member on the Ottawa Sport Council.
Yeah. Well, you know, you touched on an interesting point there, in that, you know, very rarely do you see, unless there is, you know, a major disaster, some sort of charitable cause, that sort of thing, all of the major pro sports franchises coming together. Why do you think that is, that people sort of operate in silos so much? And or are there maybe any cities that are out there that are doing a better job than maybe Ottawa or Toronto or some of the cities around us are in that respect?
Yeah, because I don't think we're given a lot of opportunity, particularly in Ottawa. We need to be more ambitious here. I would love one day just to stand up and say we should host the Olympics in Ottawa. I know if I were to say that on Twitter, I would be trashed by the trolls. I would be laughed and ridiculed off the stage. But we need to have ambition in this city. We need to say we should host the Olympics. What do we need to get there? How do we redevelop LeBreton Flats so that we can host a major international games? If it's not the Olympics, I understand that. Maybe it's the Commonwealth Games. We need to really align ourselves to be ambitious in this city. And that means the politics of it, that means the community side of it, that means the economics of it, the financials. And that gives us opportunities, Kyle, to really come together. I'm seeing this now in the sector I'm working in homelessness sector. I've never seen such amazing collaboration between the other homelessness providers and Shepherds of Good Hope. We talk every day. Every day we're collaborating and talking and what is best for the clients. And I would like that approach to be ported over to sports. The sport community, there's never been a better time and a more urgent time, Kyle, to show leadership in sport than today, right now. And there's no organization except for the Ottawa Sport Council that brings people together across the sport, recreation, leisure sector. And again, as we come out of COVID, or we start to come out of COVID, I hope, what better way to get us out of our homes, give us the trust and confidence to be out in the community than through sport, recreation, and leisure. You'll notice the first announcement by the mayor that sort of gave us hope that we're coming out of it was the parks are open again. That's recreation, that's leisure, that's sport. So we have this tremendous opportunity in sport to play that leadership role, to give people the public confidence and trust in our communities that sport matters and that we can be safe and we can enjoy time. And I really hope coming out of it that numbers increase, that people start getting involved in swimming and rowing and canoeing and kayaking and whatever. It doesn't matter what sport it is. This is the time. This is the time for leadership.
Yeah. And for those that might not be familiar with, what the Ottawa Sport Council is and what sort of their role in sport is, can you give us just a real quick rundown of that?
Yeah. The Ottawa Sport Council, it's essentially an advocate and a connector for all things sport, recreation, and leisure. We provide a lot of education sessions. You've been involved in our concussion education. We work with amateur sport organizations to increase their capacity. We want to ensure that the Ottawa local grassroots sports sector feels supported and that they're building their capacity financially, from an advocacy standpoint, from a communication standpoint. So we're all things sport, and we're really the only centralized sport voice in this city, and it's desperately needed. And there should be alignment with the professional teams. There should be an opportunity for alignment with provincial and national organizations. And because we are in Ottawa, we have that. We've got this wonderful institution in our city called the House of Sport at the RA Centre. Look at the RA Centre. The RA Centre is going to be the talk of this town in a matter of time after COVID, because they're looking at a phase 2, which is going to be the Canadian Life of Sport and Rehabilitation Centre. It's going to be a Canadian first. Their ambition is inspiring of what they're doing there. They've been slightly delayed because of COVID, of course. But the RA Centre will be nothing like it is today. It's going to be a national institution. It's going to be right up there with the Central Library, the National Arts Centre, our airport, our Shaw Centre. This is where sport needs that centralized voice, and there's no better organization to deliver that than the Ottawa Sport Council.
Well, you can tell it's obviously a cause that's obviously near and dear to your heart there. And I mean, speaking of causes that are near and dear to your heart, quite literally over your heart right now, there is the Miracle League of
There it
Ottawa
is.
logo. Can you just tell us about sort of the work
Sure.
that you've done with them and what their mandate is, and how do you even sort of got aligned with them in the first place?
Yeah. Oh, it's a pleasure to tell this story. So this goes back to 2012, 2013. I attended a Challenger baseball game, and for your audience, Challenger is a series of little leagues in Ottawa for kids in walkers, wheelchairs, intellectual developmental disabilities. And the problem with Challenger, Kyle, is they play on a traditional surface, and it presents a lot of obstacles and barriers for the kids. So I attended a game as part of my advocacy, building support for what ended up being the champions. And I met a family from Orleans, the DeRoche family, Rolly, Michelle, and their son Bryce, who I spoke of earlier. And they approached me and said, "Look, we have this dream, we have this vision to establish a Miracle League in Ottawa." I knew about it. I knew about the Miracle League in the U.S. because most Major League Baseball teams support a Miracle Field as part of their CSR. I didn't know too much about it, so I said, "Sure, I'd love to have a conversation, and we'll talk and that kind of thing." And then I noticed that Bryce went to his parents' car, and whatever. Then I sort of asked, "Well, what's he doing?" And his mom said to me, "Oh, well, he's going to the bathroom. He has to go to the bathroom in the car because there are no accessible washrooms for him anywhere around here. There's a facility in a building across the parking lot, but it's locked, and none of the kids here have accessible washrooms close to the field." And I immediately took this on because I said, "There is no dignity. There is no hope." I mean, imagine you and I being told that. We'd be calling, we'd be fixing that right away. These kids deserve every opportunity that you and I have had and everyone else has had. Just because they're in a wheelchair or a walker, it doesn't matter. They're just as equal. And this is where the social justice comes into play. So we started a campaign. We did an incorporation. We brought in some local partners. Rotary Club out in Orleans came on board. We established a board. We established a fundraising campaign, which we launched in November of 2013. And 2.5 years later, we set up the field. We launched the field, inaugurated the field with the Toronto Blue Jays. They donated just over $200,000 to us. They own the naming rights for it through Jays Care Foundation. We ran a community campaign. The city of Ottawa was phenomenal. They donated land to us. What they did was they donated Notre Dame de Champs to us, which is a traditional baseball field that was underutilized. So they said, if you can put this to good use for this great cause, then it's yours. And so we
So
had
they gave you a Field of Dreams line right there. Build it and they will come.
That's right. Literally. And so we totally embraced that. We did our fundraising, broke ground, and now it's in phases. So the first phase was the actual field itself. So it's a completely rubberized cork surface, expanded dugouts, broken up benches. So if a child wants to sit beside a friend, he or she doesn't have to just go at the ends. Like you and I can't begin to imagine the barriers that exist for a disabled person, whether they're a child or an adult. They're everywhere. And you and I don't appreciate that or understand it because we're not disabled. But one day we will be. And one day we will go through those types of things, perhaps when we're older or perhaps before. And so we all have a responsibility to understand that it's imperative for us to do what we can to support persons with disabilities because they have lots of abilities. And so we wanted this facility to be theirs. We want it to be their field of dreams. And it's not a facility, by the way, that you and I go and we take care of them and we help them and we serve them in the canteen, the hot dogs. They can do all that themselves. They feel fully independent. We have change rooms and washrooms that have hydraulic lifts and change tables. It is a beacon of hope for the disabled community in Ottawa. At the time, it was Canada's second fully accessible recreation facility. It's multi-sport as well. We've now started building fully accessible playgrounds as phase 2 or 3. And it's now the Blue Jays have adopted the model and they've rolled it out across Canada. They don't use a cork surface, they use turf, but they love the idea so much that they've replicated it across Canada for Challenger Leagues. So it's I'm more proud of the Miracle League than I am the Champions.
Wow,
it's more meaningful, and it's something that will be with us forever, and thousands of kids will enjoy that facility, and there's real pride in that.
Absolutely, and it is a beautiful facility. You would think that it's the sons and daughters of major league players. When you go in there, there's banners, and the turf is pristine, and everything's just top notch. So, do you think though that everyone who wants to get into the sports industry, they think, all right, what's the local pro sports team? I want to work for them, right? But very often there's so many different avenues of sport, and here's the perfect example of going through a philanthropic or charitable sort of endeavor to get the Challenger League up and running and revamping this field and But that's all sports business at its core there, though. Why do you think this avenue's overlooked so much, as opposed to, oh, I want to go work for the Sens or the Blue Jays or the Maple Leafs or whatever?
Well, I think it's the shiny light. People follow the shiny light. The Maple Leafs and the Habs and the Yankees and the Lakers they're not just sport brands. They're global brands. They're right up there with McDonald's and Kodak and Coca-Cola and all that. It's very easy to say. It's like I'm asked all the time, who's your favorite baseball team post Expos? I love the Pirates. The Pirates, well, they suck. Well, yeah, they suck. But I like the history. I love Roberto Clemente and Willie Stargell and the history of Pittsburgh and all that kind of stuff. We gravitate to the excitement. And I think a lot of graduates who are coming out of sport management, they want to go to where the action is. They want to be around the athletes. I can tell you, I spent a lot of time with a lot of baseball players, Ottawa Champions baseball players. And I always knew which ones were really interested in community. And fortunately, many of them were. And that appeal kind of wore off, except for talking to Hal Lanier. I loved talking to Hal because Hal Lanier played baseball. I'm going to go off on a tangent here with Willie Mays, Willie McCovey, Juan Marichal. He managed Nolan Ryan in '86 with the Houston Astros. He coached first base for the St. Louis Cardinals. That man has more stories than I've ever heard in my life, and I loved hearing all of it. But I think for a young person who's interested in professional sport, there's really core values. Community is one of them, as I've talked about extensively. You've got to love the community around you because that is your fan base. Though people in this day and age, Kyle, they want to support businesses, whether it's a restaurant or whether it's a local beer or a professional sport team that invests in community and is connected to the community. And I don't need to say it, the Ottawa Senators have learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
It's just it's a reality, and there's a concept there that's very, very important. We love to support businesses that are connected to our city and our community and every nook and cranny across Ottawa.
Yeah. And so for those that are listening out there that are looking for maybe a different avenue, there you go. We just hit on something that's definitely underexplored.
Yep.
Now, your daughter is now catching the baseball bug from everything that I can see. So I mean, looking into the crystal ball here, you're doing a lot of work with the Canadian Girls Baseball League and Association, right? Why do you think it's taken baseball so long to start to actively market to young women and young girls, right? For the longest time, it was almost an old boys club, right?
It's a great question, and it's definitely something that we all need to embrace and develop the opportunity. So happy that Jays Care and the Toronto Blue Jays decided to bring that program to Ottawa. We enrolled Sophia last year. Of course, she was 4 at the time, and you know, for her, let me tell you one story. This is really funny. So, of course, she's hitting the baseball with the tee, and in my mind, she knows what to do. So I coached her to swing the bat. So she swung the bat. The ball kind of dribbled into the infield, and then she just stopped and looked at me. I was like, well, Sophia, drop the bat and run to first base. And of course, she doesn't know how to do it. She doesn't know.
Yeah.
You know, she never played baseball before. You and I instinctively know that.
Yeah.
But when you're that age and you've never played a sport before, whether it's soccer, kicking the ball into the net, basketball, dribble, 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 stop and shoot, whatever it may be, you don't know that. So good for the Toronto Blue Jays for bringing this program to inspire girls to participate, not just in baseball. It's not about baseball. It's about sport. Sport teaches valuable life lessons. Team sport. Big example. You can be the best pitcher in the game. You can throw 9 innings of shutout ball, and you'll still lose the game if your offense doesn't score you a run. Baseball is about life. Baseball is about community. Baseball is all about us coming together and supporting each other as a community. And that's exactly, I think, the narrative for girls, is that you can be involved in baseball, get involved in the sport. We don't have a girls' league in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. So I've met with some people over the winter to talk about, why doesn't Ottawa have there are co-ed leagues, mm-hmm. but I'm talking about an exclusive girls-only league. There should be one in Ottawa, so that girls will develop and continue to be involved in baseball, so that they will become Olympic athletes. And hopefully one day Major League Baseball will have some kind of women's league, or there'll be a co-ed system. We looked at it with the Champions. We had some discussions about it. Lots of barriers, lots of cultural attitudes that we were confronted with. And I wished we played more of a courageous leadership role, but I think there's a huge gap for us and potential for us to fill in Ottawa on this.
Yeah. So looking ahead here now, what's in Sophie's future here? Is she going shortstop, pitcher, catcher?
Kyle, it's up to her. She's actually now talking about she wants to be a ballerina when she grows up, and I support her fully.
There you go. All right. Well, but before I let you go, and we can even see it in the background here, I have to ask, you are a avid baseball card collector.
I am.
I've heard that you have probably one of the more impressive baseball card collections in the city.
You have?
If you had to put a guesstimate of how many cards you own, what would it be? Ballpark here.
Listen, my friend, not only do I have a guesstimate, I have an exact number.
Oh,
it's 11,000. It's just over 11,700. I can't really show you. I have to move I've got all my binders here. All my binders are here. They're all nicely cataloged. I have an online catalog as well. And here's my Roberto Clemente rookie card, graded 2 out of 10.
Wow.
That's worth about $2,000. I've got, my whole wall here is full of cards. I've got most of Hal Lanier's cards signed. I'll also shamelessly plug my good friend Wilmer Font. I've got Wilmer's, people are really going to think I'm a nerd now. So I got Wilmer's baseball cards here. All his cards. He signed some as well. The pride of the Ottawa champions. Yeah. So I bet you regret asking me that now, haven't you?
No, I love it. I mean, do you have a favorite card, or do you have a favorite player that you've been collecting for years? Or
it would definitely be Gary Carter. I mean, this is a autograph that Gary sent to me when I was a boy. I wrote him a letter, told him I think I was 9. And he sent this back, it's personally autographed. I've kept it ever since. Gary Carter died on the very day that I announced my baseball advocacy, on February 13th, I believe, 2012. That morning, I presented to City Council on an organization called the Champions for Ottawa Baseball, and it was an advocacy organization. Jim Durrell was involved, Arlene Anderson, and a whole bunch of other people. And huge launch, lots of media, feeling great. And that afternoon, Gary died. and he was my hero growing up. So it was very bittersweet. So I collect Clemente, Gary Carter, Edgar Martinez. Edgar used to play for my uncle Gary, my mom's brother, in Calgary for the Calgary Cannons. At the time, AAA for the Seattle Mariners. So I collect his cards and a lot of others.
Amazing. All right. Well, before we let you go, where can people find you? Where can people learn more about the work that you're doing and upcoming projects and that sort of thing?
I appreciate that. So I'm on Twitter at David Gourlay, all one word. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere. I love people. I love talking to people. I love connecting with people. So please take a moment to find me on any of those platforms. And I'm always happy to talk sport. I'm happy to talk baseball. And of course, I'm always happy to talk community.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. All the best, right. And stay safe and healthy.
You too. Thanks, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Dine Sports YouTube page and podcast network. Huge thank you goes out to David Gourlay for joining us today and sharing his journey, not only through baseball, but through sports, life, business, and everything else. Lots to unpack there and real great insights into what goes into not only professional sports franchise, but also life beyond sports and leveraging some of the connections that you make in the community and building your network bigger than just the sports world as well, too. Make sure if you liked what you saw to subscribe, comment, like, make sure to follow us as well on social media at Dine Sports across all major platforms. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.